They thought he was no one, until the underground truth they tried to bury rose up and shattered every lie. Don't forget to subscribe. Your support is what will help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. The cold fluorescent lights flickered above the underground excavation room, buzzing like angry insects as Jamal stood alone in the center of the chaos. Dust clung to his boots, to his clothes, to the edges of his dignity, as a small crowd of white supervisors circled him with narrowed eyes and impatient breaths. He had only asked a simple question, one rooted in safety, logic, and years of geological training. But the moment the words left his mouth, the atmosphere shifted. "Stick to carrying crates," Mr. Ralston snapped, waving his hand dismissively as though swatting away a fly. "Leave the thinking to people who know what they're doing." A ripple of quiet chuckles followed, each one slicing into Jamal with the sharpness of a blade. He inhaled slowly, refusing to let the insult splinter him. He had felt this sting before. Doors slammed, credentials questioned, brilliance doubted simply because it wore dark skin. But today, there was something different in the air. Something buried not just beneath their feet, but beneath decades of assumptions. The excavation site, the city's largest historical dig in years, had gone silent 10 minutes earlier when Jamal identified a structural pattern in the soil layers. He had warned them that the area they were about to blast wasn't stable, that there was something ancient beneath the ground they hadn't accounted for. But Ralston had scoffed, arms crossed over his chest, pride puffed up like a balloon ready to burst. "You people always think you see danger everywhere," Ralston muttered, loud enough for the room to hear. "This is why real scientists handle the important decisions." Jamal clenched his jaw. He had 2 degrees, one from Howard, one from MIT, but none of that mattered here. Not when arrogance dripped from the lips of those who believed authority was their birthright, not when ignorance was wrapped in the armor of privilege. The room buzzed with tension, and Jamal felt the weight of every eye pressing down on him. But beneath that weight, something else stirred, a truth waiting to surface, a shift waiting to happen, because the ground was whispering, and Jamal was the only one listening. The room trembled, softly at first, like a breath held beneath the earth, then stronger, a vibration rolling through the soles of their boots. The workers froze. Dust drifted from the rafters. Even Ralston's arrogance flickered for a moment. Jamal's voice cut through the rising panic. "This is what I tried to warn you about. There's a cavity beneath the north wall." Ralston glared, though uncertainty glimmered in his eyes. "Coincidence? The foundation is stable." Another tremor answered him instantly, louder, angrier. A cracking sound slithered through the room like a warning serpent. Jamal stepped forward, ignoring the hands trying to push him back. He studied the cracks forming along the wall's edge, jagged, branching, alive. This wasn't ordinary soil displacement. This was collapse. "Everyone needs to move back now," Jamal commanded. His voice rising with authority, he no longer felt the need to hide. "The support grid is failing. If this section goes, the entire east tunnel will implode." Ralston barked, "You don't give orders here." But the ground answered for Jamal. A section of the wall burst inward, sending dirt and fragments raining across the room. Workers stumbled, equipment crashed, and fear dissolved every ounce of Ralston's bravado. Jamal shoved 2 workers out of the way, dragging another back from the falling debris. The room dipped into darkness for a breath, emergency lights snapping to life with a red glow that washed the scene in alarm. "Evacuate now," Jamal shouted. This time no one argued. They rushed toward the entrance, but another collapse blocked the exit. Panic erupted, shouts, curses, frantic breaths. Ralston stared wide-eyed at the fallen debris, as though betrayed by the very ground he had pretended to understand. Jamal scanned the room, assessing angles, weight distribution, airflow patterns, calculations firing in his mind like a rapid-moving storm. He moved toward the far wall, brushing dirt away, revealing a narrow seam in the rock. "There's another chamber behind this," Jamal murmured. "A natural void." Ralston scoffed weakly. "Impossible." "We surveyed. You overlooked it," Jamal replied, not unkindly, but with truth sharp enough to cut. Then he placed his hand against the wall, and the underground world answered. With a low groan, the hidden wall cracked open, not violently, but as though responding to an invitation only Jamal could extend. A small opening yawned before them, revealing a dark chamber untouched by modern eyes. Gasps rippled through the workers. Jamal squeezed through first, using his flashlight to cast a beam across the space. The chamber stretched wider than expected, its air cooler, ancient, heavy with secrets. At the center stood carved stone pillars etched with symbols, African symbols, in Saibidi patterns, Yoruba markings. echoes of civilizations older than the city above. One worker whispered, awestruck, This predates everything we know." And suddenly the arrogance that had filled the room for weeks shrank to dust. As everyone filed into the chamber, Jamal stepped forward, tracing the engravings with gentle reverence. "These markings belong to early West African travelers," he explained. "Explorers who crossed seas long before colonial records acknowledged such journeys. This chamber? It's evidence of presence. Black presence. Black brilliance." Silence flooded the room, thick, humbling, undeniable. Ralston looked as though someone had pulled the foundation out from under his ego. You knew this?" "I suspected," Jamal said, "because I studied beyond what the textbooks told us to believe. The soil layers, the artifacts, the angles, they all pointed to something more. But you dismissed me because you saw my skin, not my skill." His words echoed through the cavern, bouncing off sacred stone, sounding heavier than the falling debris that had trapped them. The workers stared at him with newfound respect, some with guilt, some with admiration, all with awakening. Jamal raised his flashlight higher. The beam struck a metallic structure embedded in the rock, an ancient sealed container. The air pulsed with energy, the significance undeniable. Ralston swallowed, voice trembling. What do we do now?" Jamal turned to him fully, his presence quiet but immense. "Now you listen. Because this discovery changes everything, not just about this site, but about the histories we choose to believe." In that moment, the balance of power shifted completely, and the underground darkness finally illuminated the truth. The chamber vibrated softly, less from geological instability now, and more from the weight of revelation pressing on every soul inside. Jamal approached the metal container, his hands steady, his breath calm. When he touched it, the lid gave way gently, as though waiting centuries for him. Inside lay preserved scrolls, tools, fragments of journals crafted in languages, bridging African and early indigenous traditions, evidence of collaboration, innovation, humanity, centuries before historians claimed such connections existed. One worker choked out, "This will rewrite history." Jamal nodded. "Yes, and it will restore what was buried, intentionally or through ignorance." Ralston stepped forward slowly, shame softening his features until he looked nothing like the man who had belittled Jamal moments earlier. "I was wrong," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I judged you, dismissed you, and nearly got us killed because I wouldn't listen." Jamal didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He simply held his gaze, the calm strength of a man who had fought battles long before this moment. "Justice isn't about humiliation," he said quietly. "It's about truth. And the truth is we all rise when we stop bearing the brilliance of others." Rescue teams eventually cracked through the debris, their lights flooding the chamber, illuminating the carved histories that would soon stun the world. But the most powerful transformation had already taken place inside the hearts of those who witnessed. Jamal's strength, intelligence, and unshakable dignity. As they ascended back to the surface, the underground findings behind them glowed like a final reminder. Never assume ignorance in someone simply because they don't look like the version of greatness you were taught to expect. The world above would soon know the truth. But the people who stood with Jamal that day would carry the lesson forever. If this story moved you, inspired you, or opened your eyes, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. To Daily Dose, your support helps powerful stories like this reach more people. Stay tuned for more narratives that uplift, empower, and awaken the world.